Right now, there are many trade barriers, tariffs against American companies that have to be knocked down. We need to grow jobs in America. That's going to happen because of trade.
The ability to do international business is critical to us because so many of our jobs rely on it. 100% of the jobs here at the Pipeline Development Company depend on being able to export.
Our customers are all over the world. We're not talking about exporting jobs. We're talking about making goods and exporting goods, and that creates jobs.
We need Congress, we need the White House to get rid of these trade obstacles so that we could grow, hire more people, have less unemployment in our country.
Of consumer and producer surplus to analyze the effect of a country opening up to imports in a particular industry. So we've got this autarky situation depicted here. Now, autarky means when a country is self-reliant, so it doesn't import or export initially. So where the supply and demand curve meets, the market clearing price, we've got price of P0, quantity of Q0, and that price is one that ends up equating the marginal cost of production on the domestic side with the marginal consumer benefit from consuming the product. So this is the initial situation, and we want to think about how one would depict and analyze imports. So first, I want you to just think about this for a second, of which one of these two prices would be one that would induce consumers to buy products from abroad, P1 or P2. So if you think about it for just a second, the world price needs to be below the domestic price in order for consumers to go to the trouble to buy from foreigners instead of the domestic firms. So PW2 is a plausible price for the country to import this product. Now, when the foreign competition comes in, that is going to push down the price that domestic firms can charge for their own product. Now, if it's a homogeneous good with perfect competition, the basic analysis that we're looking at here, the domestic price will go down by the full amount of the down to exactly equate the to the world price. Now, how would consumers respond to this? Well, there are going to be some consumers who are now going to be able to afford and be willing to buy this product, so that the domestic quantity consumed increases from Q0 to Q2. i.e. where the world price just meets the demand curve. So you take the price, go over to the demand curve, go down, that's the quantity consumed. That increases because the price that this product is available for has gone down. And domestic producers will scale back on their production. The price means that the price fall means that at least some firms in the domestic market who were able to sell this product at P0, a higher price, are going to leave the market if the price goes down. Now, that could be because they're individual firms that leave completely, or an existing firm scales back in its production. We've got an upward sloping supply curve, which reflects increasing marginal cost, so that the decrease in production is correlated with lower marginal cost. And we measure or depict imports as being the horizontal distance between the quantity consumed, Q2, and the quantity produced, Q1. It's imports is consumption minus production on the domestic side. Now we want to use these concepts of producer and consumer surplus. Now I've got a bunch of letters here, across this graph, but let's use the tools that we've used or developed in the producer and consumer surplus videos. So at autarky, we're going to have a measure of the benefits to producers, i.e. the producer surplus. That will, at price P0, that is going to be depicted as G, H, and I. So that is the payments to fixed factors plus economic profit to the domestic firms when they don't have any international competition to worry about. That is at price P0. If you have a reduction in price to PW2 because of the international competition, you're going to have a smaller producer surplus, area I. In other words, the producer surplus will fall as the price falls and the quantity produced gets scaled back. That change in producer surplus of GH, that is the area, the price, the area defined by the difference in the price over the supply curve, as we've talked about before. That area GH is the measure of how domestic producers are hurt by the importation of this product from abroad. Now, these two areas, G and H, have meaning. G is the drop in producer surplus associated with firms that stay in the market and who now have to face a lower price. And H is the producer surplus loss to domestic firms as they scale back production. Consumer surplus in autarky is area A. Again, if that's not clear to you, go back and look at the earlier consumer surplus video. At price P0, you've got consumer surplus of A. Once trade occurs and the price falls, you'll have an expansion of consumer surplus to the area A, G, H, M, N. So an increase in consumer surplus as consumers benefit from the lower prices. So you have a consumer surplus gain of G, H, M, N. And once again, these can be broken up into two parts. G, H, and M is the consumer surplus associated with domestic consumers who were purchasing the product before and now get it at a lower price. So Q0 consumers were buying this before, they continue to buy this, and they will have less money out of their pocket. So GHM is that increase in consumer surplus associated with those consumers that stay in the market. Area N is the increase in consumer surplus associated with people that can now afford to buy this product that weren't willing to buy it at the price P0. If you look at the consumer surplus gain and the producer surplus loss, we have net gains. If you consider a transfer between the domestic agents, the domestic consumers and domestic producers, to have no effect on welfare, that we don't really care who keeps the dollar as long as it stays domestically, then the net effects, the consumer gain minus the producer loss, is area M and N. Those are the efficiency gains associated with imports. Now we can talk about a further economic interpretation of these two areas, and we'll do that in the following discussion. So we have an increase of consumption from Q0 to Q2. It's the PowerPoint says Q1, but it's an increase from Q0 to Q2 in terms of domestic consumption. The total consumer benefit from that increased consumption is the area under the demand curve, N plus K. Consumers only had to pay K to foreigners. So you have a net benefit to consumers, to new consumers, of N. That's the consumers that are priced into the market because of the lower price. On the production side, we've got a decrease of production from Q0 to Q1. We have a savings on the variable cost of production of MJ, that's the area under the supply curve. So society basically gains that back. And the cost of importing these goods is J. So you have to pay that to foreigners. So that the benefits from reducing costly domestic production is area M. So we have these two effects. N is in Nancy, is the benefits from new consumers that are now able to buy the product. M is the benefits associated with getting some of this production from lower cost foreigners rather than higher cost domestic producers. So we've got the summary of this is very straightforward. If you import the product, domestic prices will fall because of the import competition. And this possibility of importing the product from abroad will end up helping some and hurting others. Consumers gain, domestic producers lose. But the gains to the consumers outweigh the losses to producers. Now, this clearly is going to cause controversy for the people that are involved in this import competing market, at least in terms of the producers. The workers and the firms that operate in this market are not going to like this. It's going to be no consequence to them that that consumers benefit. They are hurt, but the overall effects are nonetheless positive if we weigh the different groups equally. I also want to emphasize that the consumers in this market may not be only the final consumers. For example, somebody walking in buying a t-shirt. The consumers of these products may often be industrial consumers. For example, many of the products coming into the United States today are imported intermediate inputs. For an automobile industry, cheap steel coming in from abroad benefits a consumer, but that consumer is an industrial consumer. And so you lose jobs in the steel industry if you increase imports at a lower price, but you gain on the auto side, on the user side. In short, with this perfect competition, homogeneous goods story, we can definitely say that the net gains to the economy are positive when you open up to imports. In later videos, we'll talk about how this might be different, if at all, if we had imperfect competition, monopoly, or differentiated products.